We're here today with CEO and co-founder of the psychedelic pharmaceutical company, Mycology. Welcome to the show, Josh.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, so I have a lot of questions for you in a very short amount of time. So we're just going to get to it. Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and how did you get into psychedelic medicine?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Josh Bartch. Again, I am the co-founder and CEO of Mycology Innovations Group. So born and raised in Denver, Colorado, currently reside actually in beautiful San Juan, Puerto Rico, which is a little bit unique. But needless to say, my journey to psychedelic medicine was really after spending, just over a decade in the cannabis space and understanding kind of alternative forms of medicine. We started to really get turned on to some of the literature that was done out of the 1950s, 1960s, early 1970s. And there was an immense amount of clinical work that was done, over 40,000 individual clinical work that was done, during that time frame, really looking at different psychedelics to treat indications. And what they were finding is that, the efficacy rates that were coming out of these different treatment modalities were substantially higher than what was, than what's currently available on the marketplace. And then there was this suppression period, largely because they escaped the lab and escaped the clinic and went into the recreational setting. And it turned off all of the research. And then early 2000s, that research kind of started to reemerge and then really kind of revamped really in the last 10 years out of Johns Hopkins, NYU, Imperial College of London, some really compelling research. After that, we got very interested and decided to really get, heavily involved.
Great. So just to begin, your company, Mycology, is dealing with psychedelic medicines. What are psychedelic medicines, for example?
Sure. So psychedelic medicines, and really, currently it's psychedelic assisted psychotherapy. And that's really important that the two are in combination with each other, which is really what's happening and why you're seeing these successful outcomes. But psychedelic medicines are basically, molecules derived, some from natural fungal sources such as psilocybin or psilocin, or drugs such as MDMA that are synthesized compounds, or LSD that are synthesized compounds that have a number of effects. But at the core, the vast majority of them are serotonin agonists, and they bind to the 5-HT2A receptor. And that's really where you're seeing, these outcomes come from. But needless to say, what the traditional or, normal individual, I guess, or the vast majority of the population would consider them is hallucinogenics, right? And psychedelic drugs. However, at the core, and what we're starting to look at now is really from a molecular level, how do we take these hallucinogenics, couple them with therapy, but also improve on the molecules to make them more applicable to therapy, more applicable in a pharmaceutical setting, more appropriate in the FDA's lens, et cetera. Doing things like controlling half-life, reducing the actual hallucinatory effects of these different compounds, et cetera. So, what they are is kind of an ancient substance that's been used for, thousands and thousands of years for different sort of uses. What they're becoming is really a revolutionary medicine.
That's great. That's great. So how long do people have to wait until these lovely medicines are on the market?
So, currently you have options available. You have S-ketamine and different ketamine clinics that, some classify as a psychedelic. What we do know is that ketamine is showing very strong efficacy rates for the treatment of depressive disorders, PTSD, and even some addictions. Those are available now. You have a number of approved drugs that have hit the market. Following up, the next available drug that will be on the market from an FDA approval. Now, mind you, you do have jurisdictions such as Jamaica or the Netherlands that you can actually travel to and legally ingest these substances and take them. However, from an actual FDA approved drug, the second approved drug we believe will be MDMA on the MAPS program, which is currently in phase 3, and it's showing some incredible results. You look at indications such as PTSD that they're trying to treat, and we are as well. And they're showing efficacy rates as high as 67% complete remission, which is absolutely unheard of, especially in something hard to treat like PTSD. You know, for instance, there's not a single pharmaceutical drug that's actually manufactured for PTSD to date, right? Everything is borrowed off label. You have SSRIs, you have antidepressants, you have, you know, different types of talk therapy, et cetera, that's used for PTSD, but nothing specifically made for PTSD. And then you have MDMA that was, you know, historically thought of as a party drug. But when used in a therapeutic context, it's incredibly effective, because what it's doing is opening up the individual's, you know, sense of well-being and ability to feel comfortable to share traumatizing events that, generally speaking, would be suppressed, right? So if these are war veterans and maybe they, you know, witnessed or was involved in killing a child or something incredibly traumatic that they've been suppressing and not able to talk about, when they're sitting with a therapist and having these open conversations under MDMA, they feel a sense of, you know, a sense of comfort that they're able to actually discuss these traumatized and dig deeper, therefore addressing the core problem. And you're seeing incredible efficacy rates coming out of it because of that fact.
So want to tell you, this is really amazing. I mean, I'm so impressed with all of this, and this is like you know, we're on the edge of the future of, this is the future of psychiatric medicine, so to speak. I hope I'm saying it right.
Yeah, you are. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, we would 100% agree. And it's really important to note that, as you said, this is the future, and it's a paradigm shift, and you're moving away from this redundant pharmaceutical model that you take a pill every day, and, you know, over time you actually have to take more pills because you're you know, you're gaining immunity to whatever the said drug is. And it's in perpetuity, right? There's no end in sight, right? So this is an actual curative possibility. We're talking about our treatment modalities and some of the initiatives that we're showing, for instance, our smoking cessation initiative. After 3 macrodose treatments in the initial clinical study that was done, so actual 3, you know, treatments where you actually take and ingest a substance, the rest is psychotherapy, cognitive behavioral therapy. 80% of the smokers at 6 months were completely absent from smoking. You don't see these rates in any sort of addiction treatment that's available, nowhere close. This is over 5x what is being shown in any other, you know, treatment modality. Something really also interesting in that study, at 2.5 years, 60% of them were still completely abstinent from smoking, right? So this is a few treatments, between 1 and 3 actual treatments with the substance, and they're cured, right? They're showing complete remission or abstinence from whatever the indication is. So absolutely a different way of thinking about something. We're looking to cure the actual problem rather than treat the actual problem. And really, you know, it's a different pharmaceutical model from the company standpoint, because we're not feeding people drugs constantly and getting them hooked on our drugs, right? They're not reliant upon it. We're actually trying to fix the underlying problem, which is what should have been done in the first place. But obviously that didn't, you know, suit Big Pharma to build these massive companies.
Right. And speaking of Big Pharma, what's going to happen? What's going to happen to them when all of these companies are coming out? It's going to flip it on its head.
I mean, I think it's undeniable that, you know, these psychedelic medicines are going to make a large impact for sure. You know, Big Pharma is already jumping in. The first ketamine drug that I referenced was a Pfizer drug that was approved. You know, it's a Big Pharma drug, obviously. And you're starting to see them enter into the space as well. They're showing interest in us and other companies, and supporting our you know, different initiatives and drug development programs, and clinical trials. They have to, right? If they don't, then, you know, they're going to be in direct, you know, direct competition with things that are much safer and much more efficacious than what their treatment is. So, you know, it's either try to suppress it or join it. And I think at this point, it just makes much more sense for them to eventually join it.
Sure. For someone who wants to get a treatment today, how do they do it?
Yeah, so what we're a drug development company, so we operate strictly under federal guidelines, et cetera. So for us, we only can really recommend FDA approved drugs. So ketamine clinics here in the United States, if they are located in the States, if they're located in Canada, there's a number of ketamine clinics as well, and globally there's a number of options for ketamine treatments as well. So we think that ketamine, we don't actually participate in any sort of ketamine programs. However, we do think that it is, much more effective than what's currently available on the marketplace, and it's a great choice for different indications. So that would be where they can go. If you look at available clinics such as Field Trip, Numinous has some options as well. There's a number of other clinics here in the United States that are of note, that are reputable, and I think provide a good level of care. Outside of that, there are available options. We can't recommend them, but there are available options, predominantly in Jamaica, Costa Rica, Peru, and or the Netherlands. You have to obviously travel, but they are destination resorts that provide ayahuasca treatments and or psilocybin treatments or MDMA treatments, a number of different type of treatment modalities.
Sure. Are there DMT treatments?
There are. I can't, I don't know of any places specifically that do DMT treatments, but there absolutely are areas that you can go and do 5-MeO and different types of DMT.
Sure. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about the company's psychedelic research program.
Yeah, sure. So we have, two lead initiatives that are psilocybin programs on our first generation of drugs. So the drug, we call it Myco-001. What it is a single molecule of psilocybin purified from a natural source. So we extract, bulk extract from natural fungal sources. It goes through a very rigorous purification process to bring it down to a purified 99.9% pure single molecule of psilocybin. That is then put into a 25 milligram capsule, which is considered a full macro dose, and then administered to the patient. Our two lead initiatives are, one is smoking cessation. We have a partnership with Johns Hopkins University. The research is being led by Dr. Matt Johnson, and really piggybacking off of the compelling work that is currently underway out of Hopkins, and as well as the pilot study that was previously done that's just showing astronomically high efficacy rates for the treatment of smoking cessation. For us, we look at an indication like smoking, by far the largest killer of all addictions combined. 1 in 5 people in the United States alone are dying of smoking or smoking-related diseases. 480,000 is what that number is. 8 million globally annually. That's a ridiculous number. That's completely preventable. So for us, it was a great start, and especially when you can show success rates that we are. Our second program is for PTSD, and specifically our focus is the veterans population. Our Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Rakesh Jetley, spent 31 years in the Canadian Armed Forces. The last 10 years, he just retired in February. The last 10 years, he was the Chief of Psychiatry for the Canadian Armed Forces, and had been the chair of a number of NATO mental health boards throughout the years, but has seen firsthand one, the need for better treatment modalities, but two, also just the destruction that PTSD causes, in the veterans population. Now, with that being said, PTSD is a large indication, and there's a number of other derivatives of where, the originating source of the PTSD came from, and we absolutely want to treat all of the PTSD sufferers. We started with the veterans population because they're the most treatment resistant to traditional formats of treatment. And they're also a very dedicated population. So in clinical trials, they have very low dropout rates, which is very important for the success of your clinical trials. And obviously our affiliation and connection with, our constituency, that, vast majority are colonels or rank or above. Some retired, some active duty, but needless to say, they're really the who's who in the PTSD treatment realm. So, something that we're very qualified. And then we have a second generation novel therapeutics program that has several libraries of novel therapeutics that's looking at the first generation of drug, for instance, psilocybin or psilocin, and making modifications to that molecule that we feel improve the molecule in a number of different standpoints. One being the half-life. So instead of having an 8-hour half-life or a 10-hour half-life, controlling it to something that's more applicable and scalable in a therapeutic setting to an hour and a half or 2 hours. And then looking at, faster onset times and delivery mechanisms, such as delivering it on a patch and changing the lipophilic properties of the actual molecule so it permeates the skin, making it have a much faster onset time. So, there's a number of different improvements and drug programs that we have going on. But needless to say, it's a long process, but it needs to be done, and we're excited to actually bring it to the market.
That's very exciting. I wanted to ask you about mycology and plant medicine.
Yeah, so mycology is the study of mushrooms, specifically. So, the fungal kingdom is vast. It's by far the largest. It's much larger than the flora kingdom or plants and things of that nature. It's massive, right? And there's all different types of mushrooms that do all different types of things and have produced really unique compounds that do really interesting things. For instance, penicillin was derived from a fungal source, and then obviously you have well-known psychedelics that we talked about that produce psilocybin, psilocin, and other tryptamines that have psychedelic effects. And then you have, health benefits from mushrooms like lion's mane, cordyceps, reishi, et cetera, and many that are unknown as well. So the mycology is really the study of mushrooms. Plant medicine is, pretty self-explanatory, right? It's medicine derived from plants. So cannabinoids, cannabidiol, that type of stuff, the GW Pharma type plants, CBD oil, different sort of cannabis-derived compounds would be considered plant medicine, amongst other things.
Sure. I find it very fascinating that the work that you do with the veterans, and I'd like to hear a little bit more about it. Maybe you can tell us.
Yeah, sure. So, what really got us interested in the veterans as a constituency that we wanted to focus on was actually, a couple of things. One, I think we all agree that they're an underserved population. Veterans have an incredibly high suicide rate. 22 veterans a day commit suicide in the United States alone, right? Which is ridiculous. 30% is what the statistic is that will come home with some form of PTSD, and it's really destructive. We think that number is significantly underreported because of just kind of the soldier's mentality to suppress, weak thoughts and soldier on. So they don't feel comfortable admitting that they have or are experiencing problems in many instances. So we think that number is probably significantly higher, but needless to say, you have a massive problem where they come home from war and it ruins their family. They end up homeless and they don't have access to the treatments that, are really effective, et cetera. So, we saw a huge problem and we saw a large body of evidence, again, from the 1950s, 1960s that really supported what we're doing and the effectiveness of it to treat PTSD. So PTSD as an indication was not actually classified as an indication until 1980. Okay, so before that, it was this blanket depressive disorder. However, 1950s, 1960s, 1970s, you had thousands of people that were treated using psychedelics for this depressive disorders. But these were Holocaust survivors, these were war veterans, these were, obviously people suffering from PTSD. But at the time, they didn't have that as an indication, right? But they were very successfully being treated with LSD and psilocybin and other, well-known psychedelics that we're currently looking at. And the success rates were astronomical. I'm talking, 80% success rates, complete remission. And really what's happening is a reboot and a rewiring of the brain and digging deeper in it, you're able to really kind of analyze it introspectively, what the experience was, change your perception on how you perceive whatever the experience was, and come out of it and really improve that and kind of put it in your past and then move forward with your life, right? And it's really compelling and it's really exciting. We get traumatizing emails. I don't want to say use the word traumatizing, but heartbreaking, I think, is probably more appropriate. Emails from these veterans, and we get them frequently, and they know what our initiatives are. And, we have limited enrollment that we can actually accept and will be accepting for our clinical trials. And we don't have the ability to provide this treatment that we know is successful to large patient populations at the current moment. But we get these heartbreaking emails that are desperate emails. I've tried everything, nothing works. I'm suicidal, I need help, this and that. And we don't have the ability to directly help those individuals at this moment, but we are trying to work as rapidly as possible to be able to bring a better treatment modality and a better solution to these people that need it the most. So, it's a program that we're obviously emotionally attached to and very, very passionate about. We know the need is there. We have the team to do it. And obviously we have a lead initiative that we feel very confident will be able to provide relief for people that really need it.
You're doing a wonderful thing. Thank you. Instead of pills for life and more and more and more, something that's going to be a cure. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. Yeah, again, we're looking at, our psilocybin, protocol is basically, between 1 and 2 treatments where you're actually taking a pill of anything, and it's psilocybin, which is incredibly safe. No known long-term side effects, non-addictive, non-invasive. Literally you take it, and after you're done with the treatment, the only thing that you have lasting is the effects and neuroplasticity on your brain, where your brain is essentially creating new contacts, if you will, which is rewiring and actually opening up the brain and allowing the therapy to be more effective. But as far as negative side effects, there's literally not any that are known. Outside, potentially while you're on the substance, if you're not in a proper therapeutic setting, individuals sometimes act out or do some things that are not appropriate. However, that's why it's very important to keep these in a clinical setting where it's controlled. You're with a trained psychotherapist, PhD level, that's very trained, and you understand what you're doing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But needless to say, you look at alternatives to an indication like smoking cessation. Chantix is what is the most efficacious drug that they're giving to people. Chantix causes suicide, depression, weight gain. And then literally last week, they just announced a full global recall of Chantix off the shelves of every single shelf that it's available on, because a cancer-causing carcinogen that's in the drug. So they're giving you a drug that's incredibly dangerous, not effective, and obviously, has incredibly negative side effects to treat a life-threatening disease. It's very backwards as to how these pharmaceutical companies have thought about treatment. For instance, SSRIs. SSRIs are used to treat PTSD. On the back of the label, it says may cause suicide, and they're giving it to people that are suicidal. It just doesn't make any sense how they've gone about it, and it's really been, I think, driven by large lobbying, large money,
and greed,
and large power. So,
and greed.
Yeah,
Greed.
and greed, absolutely, 100%. So, it's not about actually curing the problem or really treating people that need help. It's more about what is the bottom line and how can we keep them, taking our drug and increase the market size. So, for us, we take a different approach, and I think that the vast majority of people that are trying to participate in this industry also take that approach, that it's time for a change, and it's time to really help people rather than sometimes worsen the problems.
Right. That's wonderful. Are you on the stock market?
We are. So we trade on Canada, and in Canada is our main listing on the NEO exchange. The stock symbol is MYCO. Also in the US, we have a listing, MYCOF. The F stands for foreign, because it's our foreign listing. We are making a move to the NASDAQ here soon as well. So we will have a full NASDAQ listing, hopefully by the end of the year, which is something that we're obviously very excited about as well.
That's great. So if people want to find out more about Mydecine, what should they do? What should they check out?
Yeah, sure. So mydecine.com, MYDECINE.com. There's a full investor presentation on there. It's up to date. You can visit it and check out the different aspects of our company. I would also, suggest that they download our application, Mind Leap Health, which is a very unique platform and has a ton of great content for your viewers. And that's Mind Leap Health. You can download it in the iOS store or the Android store, available now. And again, it's, we're pretty proud of that application as well.
Very good. And as you said, and I fully believe as well, is that this is ethical medicine.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
100%. I mean, there's a number of differences, but absolutely that is a very important difference for sure.
Great. So thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you for watching.